What do you do when your family name is built on stories and then suddenly becomes one? That's the contradiction at the heart of what we're about to explore. A family that crafted fictional worlds for millions to escape into is now the center of a story darker and more tragic than any film they ever touched. Rob Reiner, Michelle Reiner, a couple once seen as Hollywood's moral compass, found murdered in their Brentwood estate. Stabbed, silent, gone. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. And now, their son, Jake Reiner, the eldest, the journalist, the clean-cut image of the family, arrested. Not for the killings, but for helping them happen. Or, at least, for not stopping them. It's a headline you read twice, then a third time, because it doesn't make sense. Because you want it not to be true. But the more you look, the more the picture begins to unblur. And what you see underneath isn't just a broken family. It's a legacy in freefall. Let's back up. It was a quiet Sunday. Or it should have been. January. Brentwood. Stillness in the air. $1 million silence. The Reiners' gated home, a fortress dressed in glass and polished stone, felt, from the outside, like any other Hollywood mansion. But just past the iron gate, behind the security hedges and smart lighting, blood. Not metaphor. Not script. Blood on the marble floor. On the wall near the staircase. On the kitchen island. No signs of forced entry. No alarms triggered. No witnesses on the street. Just a dead director, a dead philanthropist, and a trail of silence. What does that tell you? It tells you whoever did this didn't panic. It tells you they weren't afraid of being heard. It tells you they knew the house. And perhaps more chilling, the house knew them. Now here's the part that made the city stop breathing for a second. The bodies weren't found by police. Not by a neighbor, or a friend, or some anonymous welfare check. They were found by their daughter, Romy Reiner, 27, a quiet force, just like her mother. She'd reportedly stopped by unexpectedly. Something about a missed call. Or maybe a hunch. The kind you don't explain afterward because you can't. She walked into the house, and what she saw? We'll never fully know. What we do know is that within minutes of her calling 911, she said something that would alter the direction of the entire investigation. There's someone in our family you need to talk to. Someone dangerous. Now pause there for a second. Because that one sentence, one breath, one decision to speak out, is why we're here. Because the moment Romy said that, the police didn't just have a crime scene. They had a suspect pool, and they were already looking at the guest house. Because someone else lived on the property. Nick Reiner, 32, youngest son, a man with a long, public, painful history of addiction and mental health crises. He'd been living in the guest house for months, trying to rebuild, staying off the radar, reclusive, quiet, too quiet maybe. They knocked on his door that night. They say he was confused, disoriented. There are conflicting reports about what he said, about whether he tried to run, or if he collapsed. But he was arrested. Right then. Right there. 2 counts of first-degree murder. And that should have been the story. The son who lost his way. The family who tried to save him. The tragic end no one saw coming. It fits. It makes narrative sense. And maybe that's why it was easy to accept. But what if it's not that simple? What if the most dangerous story is the one we're not supposed to notice? Because 10 days after Nick Reiner's arrest, the LAPD made another move. Quietly. No cameras. No press. Jake Reiner. The golden child. The one who got out. Arrested. Charged as an accomplice in the murder of his own parents. Let that sit for a moment. The journalist's son. The broadcaster. The former KCBS anchor who covered crime, corruption, the unraveling of other people's families. Arrested in connection to his own. But not for what he did. Not exactly. For what he knew. For what he hid. For what he may have helped arrange. Now, I want to ask you something, and be honest with yourself. Who do you instinctively believe more? The recovering addict son, living alone in a guest house? Or the polished TV personality who built a career on credibility? Because that question, that split-second bias, might be the very thing that kept this story hidden for as long as it was. And that's the trap. See, this isn't about one night. It's not even just about a murder. It's about a family that was coming apart in slow motion. Years in the making. 1,000 quiet cuts no one wanted to talk about. Power, money, resentment, ego, inheritance, and silence. So much silence. Too much. The kind that hides things. The kind that waits for the right moment to burst. The question isn't just who killed Rob and Michelle Reiner. It's why it took this long for the truth to start surfacing, and how many people helped keep it buried. Jake Reiner's arrest didn't happen in a vacuum. It came after days of internal leaks from LAPD detectives. After a discovery in a safety deposit box. After a mysterious tip from an anonymous source. After hours of surveillance footage was combed through frame by a task force that wasn't even originally assigned to the case. And now, prosecutors believe Jake didn't just fail to stop the murder of his parents. He may have encouraged it. That's not just betrayal. That's orchestration. But of course, he says otherwise. His legal team is mounting an aggressive defense, calling the charges circumstantial, premature, and a grotesque misinterpretation of family tragedy. They're pointing fingers, suggesting Romy may have manipulated the narrative, that Nick is unstable, that the real truth is hidden behind grief and trauma and optics. Maybe. But here's something else no one is talking about yet. Jake Reiner was seen entering a private security firm in the Valley days before the murder. The firm specializes in digital forensics and covert surveillance. He paid in cash, left no paper trail. No one knows what he was doing there. But it's one of many loose threads that prosecutors are now tugging at. And when you start pulling at threads, eventually, something unravels. So here's how this story is going to unfold. We're going to walk through every frame of this tragedy. Slowly, carefully, not like tabloid fodder, but like a puzzle, where each piece is jagged, stained, and painfully real. We're going to look at the forensic evidence and what it does and doesn't tell us. The last known interactions between the Reiner parents and each of their children. The digital fingerprints Jake Reiner tried to erase, but didn't. The hidden will. The missing heirlooms. The photo no one can explain. And yes, the final 911 call, in Romy's own voice. We won't give you all the answers in one breath, because that's not how truth works. It arrives in fragments, in reversals, in contradictions, and if you're paying attention, sometimes in confessions hidden in plain sight. Now look, before we continue, ask yourself this. How far would someone go to rewrite their own role in a family story that's already been written, to burn the script and start over? And what happens when that story catches fire? You're about to find out. But be warned, what comes next is not easy to hear. And it begins the moment someone opens a door they weren't meant to open. It begins when a sister walks into a house and realizes something is wrong. Terribly wrong. But what she says next, that would change everything. And no one saw it coming. What do you think you'd notice first? The silence? Or the smell? When Romy Reiner stepped into her parents' Brentwood estate, it wasn't immediately the sight of blood that hit her. At least, that's what one detective later said in a private debrief. It was the way the house didn't sound right. No rustling from the kitchen. No subtle hum of Michelle's playlist through the house speakers. Not even the rhythmic breath of the AIC, which, oddly, was off despite the warm evening. You don't expect to walk into your childhood home and hear nothing. You expect life. Even the kind of life that's mundane. The dishwasher humming, a chair creaking, a dog's nails tapping the hardwood. But that night, nothing. And that silence? It stretched until it snapped. Let's walk through it. The Reiner estate sat just off Tigertail Road. A steep incline, wide drive, camera-lined perimeter. Nothing particularly extravagant by Brentwood standards, but elegant, tasteful, private. A smart home system operated most of it. Entry sensors, smart locks, facial recognition. All top-end. But here's the first contradiction. That night, there were no triggered alarms. No forced entry. No sign of any external breach. Police say the doors were unlocked. Or more specifically, someone had unlocked them. And not just one. 3. The front door. The sliding door by the den. And the interior door connecting to the garage. Now, could this be normal? Sure. In any ordinary family home, someone forgets to lock up. Leaves a door ajar. Especially if everyone inside is familiar. But this wasn't a normal home. Not since Nick moved into the guest house. According to a close family friend, Rob and Michelle had gotten more careful. They'd had a scare a few months back, the friend told a reporter under condition of anonymity. Nothing big, just a misunderstanding with Nick, something about him trying to get into the main house late at night. It wasn't spoken of publicly, but after that night, Michelle made it a rule to keep the internal door locked at all times. And on Sunday night, that door? Wide open. Now, let's go back to Romy. She pulled into the drive around 7:10 p.m., records show. Her phone pinged the home Wi-Fi at 7:12. According to her official statement, she'd come by to follow up on a missed call from her mom earlier that day. Something had felt off in Michelle's voice. She'd called twice more. No answer. Texted. Nothing. It's not like them, she told police. Michelle Reiner didn't leave texts unread. And so Romy let herself in with her own key. That's where time fractures. We don't know the exact order of what she saw next. We only know that at 7:15 p.m., a 911 call was placed from her cell, and the transcript, or the redacted version released 2 days later, tells you almost everything and nothing at once. Let me read you just one line. I think they're not breathing. Oh my God, there's blood. There's so much blood. Please hurry. Now stop there. Because it's easy to breeze past that line. But imagine saying it. Imagine realizing, in a fraction of a second, that both your parents are lying motionless on the floor. That the quiet wasn't just eerie, it was evidence. Because something violent had happened. Something intimate. This wasn't a drive-by. This wasn't a robbery. There were no valuables taken. No jewelry missing. No signs of a rushed exit. In fact, quite the opposite. Everything in the house was still. And it gets worse. According to the preliminary coroner's report, both Rob and Michelle Reiner had been stabbed, multiple times, but with a precision that suggested control, not frenzy. Not passion, deliberation. Michelle was found first, near the bottom of the stairs, one hand outstretched, as if she'd been reaching for something. A phone, maybe. The banister. A person. Rob was found in the den, slumped near the window, his reading glasses on the floor beside him. Not shattered. Just placed there. The implication being that someone had killed him, then carefully removed them. There was no sign of a struggle. No overturned furniture. No broken glass. No bruising on their wrists to suggest defensive wounds. But here's what was found. A single bloody footprint. Small. Narrow. Slightly bowed on the right arch. And it didn't match Romy. It didn't match the paramedics. And it didn't match the officers first on scene. The footprint was traced, not to a shoe, but a bare foot. Which means someone entered that house, walked into the scene, and left barefoot. Why? And more importantly, where did they go? This is where the story starts to slide sideways. Because there are two security systems at the Reiner estate. One, the standard camera setup, exterior facing, cloud connected. The other, a private, internal camera system. Not active. Not anymore. Police believe it was disabled roughly 2 hours before the estimated time of death. That's not a guess. That's based on a timed signal from the smart hub, which stopped transmitting at exactly 4:58 p.m. Now, the only way to disable that signal without alerting the app is from inside the system panel, located in the hallway closet just past the kitchen. Again, someone knew the house. They knew how to avoid being seen, but they didn't know about the hidden backups. And this is where the investigation starts breathing again. Because what the killer, or killers, didn't realize was that the backyard garden shed had an independent motion sensor system. Installed 6 months prior after a trespassing incident involving a deer and, reportedly, a disoriented neighbor. That sensor caught movement at 5:26 p.m. A single figure, tall, slender, moving calmly across the stone path toward the garage. Not running, just walking. The footage is grainy, but the gait? Distinct, upright, measured. The kind you see in someone confident they won't be interrupted. And here's the real kicker. They weren't carrying anything. No weapon, no bag, no phone. Just their body, in one hand, held behind the back. Let's pause there. Ask yourself, why would someone hold their hand behind their back in the middle of a backyard? Not in front, not hanging by their side. Behind. Was it habit? Or were they hiding something? Now let's bring in the timeline. Police believe the Reiners were killed between 5:05 and 5:18 p.m. The sensor picks up movement at 5:26, and Romy doesn't arrive until 7:12. Which means whoever did this had nearly 2 hours to do whatever they wanted. 2 hours to clean up, to stage, to remove evidence. But here's the contradiction. They didn't stage anything.